I've had an idea for a project that is so compelling to me and so exciting, and it is also so far outside of my technical ability and my comfort zone. But unlike previous times that this has happened, I don't feel scared to pursue it, and I don't feel like I'm not going to be able to do it. I just recognize that I have a lot of work to do to build my skills and my confidence so that hopefully I can execute this project. Hello and welcome to another video. If you're new here, I am an artist who took a really long break from making art, and I've been working very hard to get back into it. And I am very inspired by comic books, graphic novels, DIY art, and zines. And I have always wanted to make a long comic book or graphic novel. Always wanted to do it. And even though I love comic books and I read a lot of comics, and I've even made a handful of really short comics, I have never felt ready to jump in and try it for myself. I've always been way too scared, and I have always gotten stuck on the idea that whatever I make is gonna be bad and not good enough, and more importantly, that it won't live up to the idea of what it could be in my brain. And instead of just pushing through that and moving on with the idea and with the project, I have let that consistently stop me from even trying. And that stinks. But I had the realization the other day that so much of the way that I have grown as a person and changed as a person and built my life into something that I'm proud of and that I want to be doing, it's been through little baby steps, accidental lessons, and essentially just building habits and skills gradually day by day. There's been very few cases of times where I have decided that I wanted to change something about my life, or that I wanted to be a certain way or do a certain thing, that I was then able to snap my fingers and make something happen immediately. I don't know that I can even remember a time where I made a super drastic change and added something new to my life, or just decided okay, this is how it's going to be now, and then made the change immediately, successfully, and in a way that lasted. That just has not happened for me, and I don't think that that's a normal thing. I think that doesn't happen that way for most people. And so I was thinking, if I can recognize that changes in life and growth in life happen gradually, and it's all sort of you've got to take steps along the path to get to where you want to go, why am I expecting myself in art to do something for the first time and have it be perfect, or else it's not worth even trying? That's a total dissonance between how I feel about living my life and how I've been thinking about making my art. And I think that they don't need to be two separate concepts, if that makes sense. So let me talk about this project and what's kind of kicked off me even thinking about this stuff. I really want to make a comic series. I have wanted it hypothetically for a long time, and I hadn't really had anything that I felt was a great idea to jump into. But I've got these two goofy little dogs, and I'll share a picture of them here. And they are just some of the silliest little dogs. They are weird, they are funny together, they're funny by themselves. They're just oddball little dogs. And sometimes they're really fun, sometimes they're really annoying. That's the nature of dogs. But I adopted them under some very unusual circumstances. And I really feel like the story of me adopting them and of them living their little doggy lives would translate so well to a comic. I just think it would be perfect. And I am so excited about this idea. I think it's so much fun. I know that I would be proud of it if I made it. But I do feel like there's a real skill gap where I'm over here as the artist, and all the way over there is the idea that I've had. And I recognize that there's a pretty big distance between what I want to do and what I am going to be able to do. And I do want to do this in a way that feels successful and that I make something that I'm proud of. And I've got some ideas about how I'm going to encourage my technical growth and my artistic growth in a way that allows me to start tackling my big idea, my big project, my big comic book that I have had as a dream in my mind for a long time, and that now I feel like I actually have a story that I want to tell, that I feel ready to settle into and start working on. And the way that I'm starting, before I even get out the pen or the paper or start working tangibly on my project, is I want to think about, what do I feel like is holding me back? Like what parts of this project do I feel like I'm not ready for? And I'm starting by identifying weaknesses that I want to work on strengthening. And I think that this is an important tool for any artist to have, is like that ability to like look within yourself and figure out what you want to work on or like how you want to improve. But I do feel like this is a tool to be used for growth, and that it's really important that you don't get stuck on like focusing on, oh, I'm bad at this and I'm bad at this and I'm bad at this and I'm bad at this. Like at that point, this is no longer a tool, this is just you talking down on yourself. And so I have tried to focus on a couple of things that I know that I feel not that confident in. And the first one is that I have always been a visual person. I love to draw. I have always drawn. I am not a writer. I can spell, I can write a sentence. I understand how to write, but I am not a writer. So plotting, dialogue, narration, that all feels incredibly foreign to me, and I'm not very comfortable with it. It's very, very hard, and every time that I have ever even done like a little mini comic, I've always struggled with like the writing element of the story. I also have a really hard time with consistency in traits for characters, or like making a character look recognizable across different scenes or like in different images. So I could draw a character 10 different times and it doesn't look the same, even if it's supposed to be the same person. And so that's something that I just have never really worked on. I mostly do like one-off drawings where I don't really care if a character looks the same as another character. It doesn't really matter because it's just like a standalone project. But that's definitely a weakness of mine too. I recognize both of those weaknesses, and it's important to me not to get stuck on what I am bad at, but rather to think about, how am I going to strengthen those weaknesses, and how am I going to work through and work past those weaknesses so that they are no longer weaknesses. And I'm going to do this by making alternate projects, or like smaller little like bite-sized, snack-sized projects. And so because I'm not ready to make like a big, long, multi-volume comic, I don't feel like prepared to plot out and storyboard like a huge, sprawling comic that's going to document years worth of information sort of in segments. I'm just like, that's too much for me right now. And I'm not saying that from a place of fear. Like I just recognize that that is objectively something that I'm not ready to get into. But I am ready to start making some smaller things. And I have been working in my sketchbook on some stuff that I'm really happy with. I've been practicing my visual storytelling, and I have been practicing sort of how narration goes by doing little daily comics. And let me grab my sketchbook out and I will show you some of the things that I'm working on and sort of like how it's been going. So this is just a quick little like daily journal style comic that I made the other day, sort of documenting my trip to the cafe, and kind of wanted to focus on how do we tell the story visually without any narration, because that is something that I want to work on too. And I was pretty happy with how that turned out, and I thought it was fun. And I also did a quick one from one morning I did not want to get out of bed, and this was about being brought coffee in the morning and trying to wake up. And again, this is more like visual storytelling, and just kind of focusing on how you would lay out a storyboard. And so this is how I'm sort of trying to build those muscles. These are like my little comic book muscle exercises, so that hopefully once I've done a bunch of these, I'll feel pretty good about just jumping in and just telling any kind of story. And then as far as working on consistency in characters, I do want to work a lot on my dogs, because my dogs are going to be a pretty important part of this little story. And so I have been drawing my dogs in different ways and in different styles, sort of seeing what feels the best to me, and in ways that I'm trying to maybe pick how I want to work on replicating them, and seeing if I can come up with some cool ways to have them. And this has been a lot of fun too because, again, I'm just drawing little pictures, which I do anyway, but I'm doing it with the focus of making art for a comic book that is coming up. So I feel like this is like some good bite-sized stuff. I'm not really touching the big idea yet, but I'm gonna start soon because I've also come to the realization that if I make something and it's not exactly how I want it to be, who cares? You know, I have read so many books, I've seen so many movies, I've seen so many paintings where the author or the artist or the director or whoever, they're very clearly working through like the same themes or the same settings or the same just general ideas over and over again. And they're like coming at stuff from a different perspective, or they're doing like a different iteration of the same idea, but they're like obviously working through something that they find interesting and compelling. And I actually really like it when artists work through the same thing. I like seeing different versions of the same idea from them. I think that that can be really like, it feels very personal and it feels really like compelling, I guess, to see what people are stuck on and what they're thinking about. And so, like, why can't I do that? I'm not quite there yet, but let's say that I start my comic and it's not exactly what I had thought that it was going to be, not quite what I intended. If it's not as good as I imagined, I can just make another one. I can make another one that's better. I can make another one that's different. Who cares if there's two comics about my dogs out in the world? I can just make another one. And if it's that bad, I can just throw it out and make another one. Like, it doesn't matter, you know? Just because I make one version of something or I make a bad version of something, that doesn't stop me from making anything else. And so I'm working really hard on like, who cares if it's bad? I'm gonna make some bad stuff. You gotta have a few bad things if you're gonna get anything good. And so I'm trying not to worry about making bad stuff. And of course, you know, it feels great when you're just good at something and you achieve it and it's easy, no problem. But realistically, if you're trying something new, it's gonna be hard to do it well the first time. And the only way that you can do something well and get better at doing it is by doing it poorly until you get better. I'm embracing making bad stuff or making multiples of things that I'm working through the same idea over and over again. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And I also think that even if what I make is less than what I expected or like less good than what I want from myself, there's still so much that I'm gonna learn from it. And that is really, really useful too. And while we're talking about learning from things and learning from experiences, I also wanna talk about learning from inspirations. So I think every artist has other artists that they admire and that inspire them. And right now, I have a bunch of comic inspirations. I like to keep copies of their work on hand so that I can look at them. I've got a few right here, and I may end up doing a little video sort of featuring my comic inspirations in the future if folks are interested in that. But you know, right now, my comic inspirations are just that. They're inspirations and they're people that I admire. But I feel like once I actually make a comic, their work becomes context to my work. I can learn about myself through their work and the way that it like sits against mine, if that makes sense. And it's so easy to think about people that you admire and artists that you admire as like magical genius prodigy artists and that think that they're doing stuff that you could never do. But they're all just people that really like to make things and that then made something. And that's not to say that they aren't magical and that they're not geniuses and that their ideas aren't amazing, because they are. But when it comes down to it, I'm a person that likes making something. Maybe you're a person that likes making something. And maybe we also can be magical genius artists and make something that we're really proud of. And so I think it's just they are doing something well, and I want to do it too. I want to do it with them. I don't want to look at them and be like, oh, I can't ever do that. They're so amazing. They're this, they're that. They are amazing, but I want to be amazing and I want to do stuff that I'm really proud of too. And I think it's really helpful to compare what you're doing or what I'm doing to the people that we admire. You know, I like to see what I find successful in other artists and compare it to my own. And I'm not suggesting to get caught up in comparisons, because comparison is the thief of joy, and everybody's going to make different things and everybody's starting from a different baseline. And I just don't know that it's super healthy to like get stuck in the comparison mode. But I do think it's really important to pay attention to why you admire somebody's work and what you find so impactful about it. You know, what do you like about the work? Do you like that it's vulnerable, or that it's funny, or do you love the style or the storytelling? Like, what about it specifically speaks to you? And how do you apply that to your own work? If you make something that you think is pretty good, but it doesn't connect with you in the same way that somebody else's work does, like, is that something that you can then like turn around and improve your work by adjusting what you're doing? And I'm not saying to copy people. This is absolutely not encouraging copying people's stuff, but I do think it is really important for me in particular, because I'm trying to find my comic voice, to pay attention to what I like and appreciate in other people's work and decide sort of whether or not that applies to my work, and if it does, how specifically I want to like use the things that I like in other people's work to inform my work. Everybody's got positive qualities in their work, and I think that it is so good to look outside of what you're doing towards other people's work and find those positive qualities. And while we're noticing positive qualities in other people's work, I think it is so important to see the positive qualities in your own work and to celebrate small successes. And you know, don't forget to celebrate your progress and your success. I have a long way to go to work on the project that I want to work on. As I've stated, I have a lot to build on, but I have a lot of successes that I've already like logged in my book. For one, is just even having the, I guess, courage, maybe. I don't know if courage is the word, but I had the idea that I wanted to make this particular comic book into a story. And a year ago, I wouldn't have done that. If I had thought of this, I would have thought to myself, oh, I can't do that. I'm not ready for that. That would be too hard. And then I wouldn't have thought anything of it at all. And so having even just sat down to like work through how I want to achieve this is a huge, huge win for me. And I have done more drawing and more comics over the past couple weeks with the mind towards making this comic book. And I'm really happy with sort of the minimal progress that I've made. And I think that that's like a big deal. Improving an art skill, or improving my art skills, I would say is a lot like going to the gym or growing a garden or learning to play an instrument. If you look at your progress day by day, if you are watching your muscles grow, or you're seeing how much weight you're adding on to your exercises that you're doing, or you're trying to measure the stem of your flower or anything like that, day by day, there's not that much growth. But if you look 6 months in advance, or you look 6 months in the past, it's so obvious that there are big jumps in skill and in confidence and in ability. And so I think it's really important that you don't get stuck like hyper focusing on what you can't do or what you want to be able to do but you can't do yet. And instead, remember that things do take a long time, and that they will take a long time. And just because you don't feel like you're skyrocketing to the top of your ability level, or that you're not like achieving everything that you could possibly imagine right this second, that doesn't mean that you're failing on what you're trying to do. And I don't know, I just think that artistic growth is slow and it can be hard to notice sometimes. And I'm not saying to just like take the easy mode and let it ride and let it coast. I think that we can take a pretty active hand in developing our artistic growth, but good things take time and art takes time. And I would say that you all will see a comic about my doggies soon, but I think that that would be totally against the point of this whole video. But what I can say is that I am working on my doggy comic, and I think that I will have something that I'm really proud of when I am done. And I am just so excited to even be getting this idea out into the world. And that's kind of all I have today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you are working on something that's making you happy, and I will see you next time. Bye.